In Office 365, a spreadsheet isn't just numbers and text and formulas. It's now a wonderful way to manage images. What we're looking at today is using images in our spreadsheets through lookups. We're going to use the image function XLOOKUP to create some wonderful stuff, in particular a wonderful HR list and dashboard where our staff's pictures are brought to life in office cards on our spreadsheet along with other data. It's a wonderful technique and I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. So let's dive in, shall we? We're going to have a look at a really cool way to deal with images within a spreadsheet using a couple of techniques, and one in the main we'll be using is the image function. Now, it's one of the modern Excel functions with Office 365 where we are able to bring an image into a cell so that it can be sourced and referred to in various ways in your spreadsheet functions. Now, one we're going to deal with today is a dynamic image dropdown. Now, we'll actually have a look at two examples. The first one will be just a fairly simple one. The second one, however, is something that might be of use in an organization that has images as part of their daily work. Now, that could involve product images, as I've done in this example, something else, which I don't want to reveal just yet. It could be images for logos, so an image repository for use in marketing, a whole range of things that are pretty cool. Now, let's have a look at the image function itself, and we'll have a look at some other aspects of using images as well. So first off is the actual syntax of the image command, which has these components here. Now you'll see that most of them are optional in the square bracketing. So let's go through each and every one though. So the source. Now the source is a particular one where it has to be a full URL path, but one that uses the HTTPS security protocol. Now that means that your source image must be stored somewhere on a site, a publicly or otherwise accessible site that uses that protocol, HTTPS. Now, the file must be one that is directly accessible as well. So it can't be something that requires authentication because within image we can't build that in. So the location must be direct and using the file formats you can see listed here, BMP, JPEGs, GIFs, TIFFs, PNG, ICO, and also the Google WebP protocol. And I believe that note there might be relevant to a few people. Now, the next thing is the alt text. Now, the alt text can come in handy in certain applications, but in its main is that it's an accessibility option that you add to all images. For those that use screen readers, they'll be able to tell what the image actually is. Now, it is optional, but if your users were requiring that as a facility to understand and use your spreadsheets, please do add it. Now, the sizing one is interesting because it'll be relevant, become evident in the example we'll be looking at in a moment, where the image will fit with the first option of 0, the image will fit in the cell and maintain its aspect ratio. So its size and height ratio will not change. So you might end up with a tiny little image, but as you expand the height or width of the cell, the image will grow in relation to that aspect ratio. option number 1 will fill the cell with the image regardless of the height and width ratio. So it will look a bit stretched potentially, or just really weird, skinny head or something like that. Now the option 2, which is going to give you the original image size. So that could be a monster. So it might be really, really big, really, really small, whatever the size of the image was, that's what it will show. So that might go beyond the cell's boundaries. Now you would use option 3 if you wish to specifically control those elements of height and width. So when option 3 is chosen, you then can use the final 2 components of the image function, and that is the height and the width in pixels. But that will only be relevant when we have option 3 chosen as the sizing. Okay, now one little addendum there is that if only one height or width size is specified, it will be along the lines of the aspect ratio, the image size that you get. So it will be the ratio based upon the height or width that you enter just the one of. But for specific control, enter both height and width. Right, so that's the formula we're going to use, the function image. But let's have a look a bit closer at some image placement controls that are there right now. One of the things that we have when we're bringing an image into Excel is that we can place it directly over the cells, or we can place it within a cell. And this is just simply bringing an image in. So from a stock source or something that you have on your computer or something on the web as well. So when I click on this image here or here, you'll notice this little command option flies out to the right, and that is to be able to place that image inside a cell in the top left corner. So if I click that button, see what it does. And that's what I was saying before, you might end up with a tiny little image. And notice I've got alt text on that saying the dog with autumn leaf in mouth. Now that can be brought anywhere, but if I change the height or the width, you'll see that the image scales along with that. Now clicking that button again takes it outside of the cell where you're free to place that directly over the cells. And as an image that is over the cells, you have these other controls to change its orientation and sizing handles to do the sizing from whichever angle you need to. So when we're bringing pictures in, if we click Insert on the ribbon, and over here under Illustrations, as it's called now, we have Pictures, where we can choose to place in cell like we just did, or over cells. Now when we choose either or, you'll see the options of where to draw that particular picture from. Is it from this device that we're working on, the Microsoft stock images, or somewhere online? And that's why you make that choice first, and then you choose the source for the image that you're inserting. Now, one of the options there is to insert icons. It's one that I use quite a lot. And you can see here's a few icons. And the same thing applies to these. If we drag them around over the cells or click to place it in a cell like so. And then we are able to place that wherever we want and size column and row headings to make that appear as large as we need to. With these icons, we can select them and change some aspects of those. You can see here the context menu of graphics format, where we can change what fill color we're choosing to use and all of those sorts of things there. And also we can, as you can see, click to place in the cell again. And much as we've done here with these two were originally icons, and they're now pictures that we're scrolling around, changing the height of to suit a particular purpose. Right, now an additional aspect of objects that appear in our spreadsheets, one is of course the charts. Now I'm just going to click on that chart that I've created there. Let's just have a quick look at how we do create charts. They're pretty cool. So I'll just hit delete to get rid of that one. Now I've got my data laid in a matrix style format, which will make this creating a chart super easy. And with those cells selected, clicking on insert, and you'll note we have the options of all the charts that we can create living here. I'll just choose one quick one here, the 2D column, and I can just play with the certain elements and just make it all a bit better and whatnot. Now, you'll notice when I click on that element, that object, the chart, as opposed to this graphical element, I don't get that option to place this chart in a cell. This will only display over the top of my cells. I can do other few techniques with it, but it is a different beast to the graphic that we just looked at before. Now the buttons to the right of a chart object are adding or removing certain chart elements, dealing with chart styles, and saying what data points you wish to display so you can filter out bits and pieces. So a different thing again, but still an object that sits on our chart. Sorry, an object that sits on our spreadsheet. Okay, so there are a few background things to do with images as they appear now. So let's have a look at how we're going to employ using the image function. So firstly, I've got a table here with the names of the animals and a second column with the URLs for where the pictures I wish to use are located. Now you'll notice all of them have HTTPS on them, but I have one that's going to fail, and we'll have a look why that's going to fail and see about correcting that in a moment. But basically these are all HTTPS and directly pointing at a JPEG file in the main, as you can see here. And this one though has a small little addition to it. So it's going to call a file through that URL, which is not going to be what we want to see. We want to go to the direct storage location for that file. So that's the thing we need to correct a bit later on. Now, down here in this area, you can see I have a drop down from a data validation list. And if I choose kangaroo, it goes off and it pulls the kangaroo image from this URL. And choosing the next one, emu, same, koala. Now this one's a bit different because it's a portraits image. You can see that that doesn't fill up the entire cell, if you like. So that's why I was talking earlier about size control. And the dingo is going to not work. Now we have this value error. So we have a value error, and if you'll notice the icon is saying that's an invalid URL. So that's a big clue as to what's going on. Now, before we go any further, let's look at our last picture, of course, which is what we had earlier, the crocodile. Now, what's wrong with the dingo location there? So let's call that data out and let's see what's wrong with that. And we'll go to that particular URL. Now, because it's calling it indirectly as such, to call it through whatever image display it's trying to do, if we right click on this image and choose the option of copy image link, then if we go to our location and let's paste that in, you'll see it's removed a lot of that extra detail in the URL. Let's have a look at what happens when we now choose a dingo. Bingo, we have fixed that value error. So let's get rid of that. And we have now got our image displayed as we wanted. So that's just a quick explanation of creating our image lookup using a small table which has the names that we're looking up from this data validation and calling that from this location here, and then looking up what URL we have based upon our particular animal. So you can see with this one, it's the same layout that we've got here. So we've got our data validation list, looking up the images above. Now, this item here, the 0, was those sizing choices. So 0 is going to fit it in the cell. Let's have a look at what 1 does. And as I referred to earlier, it's going to skew things based upon the height and width of the cell because that's filled it. So I needed to stretch it out a bit to get the kangaroo looking a bit more like a kangaroo. Now let's look at what option 2 does for us. And that is the full size option. So we get the image sitting outside of the cell because it's at its full size. Now, if that was a massive image, you could imagine a huge image not showing you much. Now, of course, the third one, number 3, was to show a custom size that then we could add the other 2 options of height and width after the custom size 3. So I'll just flick it back to 0 to fit the cell, and that's what we're after. So that's not going to make a difference if it's a small cell or a big cell. So it's still going to give you that ratio of height to width of the original image. This example we're now dealing with relates to a fictitious company called the Creative Instinct Design Studio. And we have a list of employees. Now you can see that that's being created in a table. And the table consists of these columns of data. And we have our staff ID, which is a key to a lot of the things we're going to do with this example. The people's names and their roles and departments and emails and where we store their records are all of the other fields, with a final one being an actual image of each employee. Now, these pictures were stored and brought into the spreadsheet within the company's resources. So they're not pictures that are currently available on a web location that can be controlled with the image function. So we can't refer to these as HTTPS locations. So we brought them in as individual files that we simply formatted and sat on top of the spreadsheet over the cells and placed inside the actual places in the table. So that is a way that you can bring images in as well to use in similar sort of functions that we're talking about today. With that in place, we're going to look at how we can then utilize this for someone's job, something to make their life easier. So here we have data and images that we wish to search through to get a piece of that back or a collection of that image and data. Let's have a look at how we've approached this on this tab here, the employee card. And what we've done is taken the salient details of each individual record, each individual staff member's details. Based on their ID, we again have a data validation that lists from the original table, the employee table list, the employee IDs as the data that is being listed through the data validation. Then on these areas here, we are simply doing X lookups based upon whatever is chosen here in the drop-down list. The lookups will look that up in the staff list through the staff ID column, and in this case, pull out the first name that matches that particular entry in E7. Same thing applies for the last name, their department and job role, file location, and records location, and their email. And finally, the most important part that we're talking about today, their actual image can be looked up. So when we change our drop down to another record, there we are. All of those details update for this new particular person, and we can see all of their details listed there. Now, how do we get this looking like so? Well, the first step in this sort of this dashboard looking approach is to go to the View command, turn off the grid lines, and simply all that is done from there on in is from the Home tab, filling cells with color, placing text within various locations, and just simply filling in the details of our card, dressing it up with a bit more color. I've got a very narrow row here and column that I've simply colored the group of cells to make it look like a bounding border. And over here, drawing a few stats from our list. So using the function count A, we're just simply counting the number of employees. And if they're blank in the staff ID, those two that are there, we'll have a look at those, report back as the vacancies. And I like this little icon here. Told you I like to use them a lot. The vacancy is represented by an empty chair. Yeah. So if we go back to the list here, you can see a staff ID exists for all relevant employees except these two vacant positions here. Now back to our card. We then have a calculation of the vacancy rate, another icon to represent an org chart that we could link to call that up. And we have additionally a chart, and it could be a number of charts or pivot tables that are located here. And this chart is simply a representation of what's in this chart. So just a simple little table of values about how many roles exist in each department. So a wonderful little way to present data in a much more appealing manner to those that have to use it. So I hope you enjoyed our little journey with images today. And if you like this video, if you could give it a like, that would be awesome. And particularly as well, if you would like to see more of these videos from me, please subscribe to the channel and you'll get first dibs on those. So hope to see you in the next one and have a great day.